Good morning and welcome to Philadelphia Walks PTSD. My name is Sharon Cole, or Sharon, or Cole, whatever you want to refer to me as. It doesn't matter. I've been called everything under the sun and don't care. So, anyway, in a good way, of course. And it makes one stronger to get past, um, you know, name calling and the anchoring of gang stalkers, which would involve name calling, and someone who was minding her own business could all of a sudden believe that other people believe that she's a rat or a dog or a pig or a squirrel or a mouse or this, that, and the other. I could go on forever. I don't know what it means. I'm okay with that. I don't have to be part of a special group, cult, or gang where everybody knows the meaning of something or thinks they know the meaning of something. I've always sort of not been able to be the join or die group. I don't know why. People are born differently. There's don't tread on me or join or die. And somehow I'm in the don't tread on me category. So, anyway, it's just the way it is. It takes all kinds. It wouldn't do for everybody to be the same. So, those are all the kitsch phrases, or some people even see them as almost platitudinal or platitudes, kind of. But anyway, just these comments we all say all the time, all these expressions, and you go, girl. Okay. So, but this is day 59 of my one video each day, 365-day campaign raising money from donors big and tall, short and small, to make up for a life lost. An entire decade, 12 years, even ongoing, because of torture that began in 2011. That's hard to prove. And it turns out in a liberal, sorry to say liberal, but in a city, like Philadelphia, where you think the Constitution reigns supreme, it can feel like a show here, and people don't do anything. Or there really is no recourse for the type of activity that happened in my case, which I will describe as I usually do in these videos. I know it seems like never ending, but I do it daily to get my voice out there, because obviously no one's going to go back to 30 days ago to figure out what I was trying to talk about. So it all kicked off the fourth Monday of January 2011. There was a slight lead up because I started to feel uncertain and wasn't sure who. There were people who were friends who were doing things that were inconsistent, and something seemed off. But I just kept going with it because I know people can be fickle and people change and so forth and so on. So in a way, I felt like I was intentionally destabilized by the people I had sort of met as friends in the time leading up to this. And there were quite a few, because I was participating in a whole bunch of things. So I was volunteering, I was running with a group, I was doing all kinds of stuff. And all of a sudden, on the fourth Monday of January 2011, with snow being a big deal that year, the biggest since 1941, we had blizzards, state of emergency, and snow just kept coming and coming and coming and coming and coming that year. We even had snowmen super tall that would need cranes to build them in Rittenhouse Square. I've never seen that before, and I haven't seen it since. So I'm kind of curious what was going on. But those heads would fall off of those super snowmen, and I would wonder if my head had been cut off in a metaphorical way. But the fourth Monday of January 2011, I was made to believe I'd be murdered in my apartment. There were a series of events that kicked off. Hard to explain, but there was a lot of ruckus outside my window. I was in a first floor apartment of a row home with a basement underneath that had windows. And I had just moved into this place, so I couldn't remember if the windows were easily accessible or not. But in my mind, they must have been, because I thought somebody was coming up through the basement to kill me. I actually did believe it was the last night of my life. In addition, there was a white van idling outside with a guy with a headset, and he kept looking in, but he looked creepy and scary, and he reminded me of a guy who's now deceased, but his name was Ted Fagel. I didn't always love Ted Fagel, but whatever. He supported the gayborhood, so everybody was supposed to like him. I'm kidding. He was a certain type of guy, but he knew how to raise money for the LGBT community, I guess. And I thought it was him for some reason. That's his name and imagery flashed through my mind. And in addition, my laptop had come on by itself. So I was awakened by the sound of my laptop doing a ding. It had a certain jingle. It's different these days, but it was the days when it had that kind of curvy square, like a rounded square and a daisy in the middle. So now I see the daisy as evil, but I'm a little bit over it. But in a way, all of this kicked off. I was on top. I peeked through the blinds really quick. I was afraid to do that, to see the van there. I thought someone was coming up through the basement. I actually believed it was the last night of my life. I started thinking about all kinds of things. I was on top of the bed. I had lost 2 cats prior to, I had had 3 cats for various reasons over the course of quite a few years, and 2 of them had passed away leading up to this. I actually wonder if the universe made sure that I slowly didn't have cats, because the cat that was in the apartment with me at the time, who darted over to the little tiny, at a incredibly small, I guess it was called a closet. It was this little tiny postage stamp of a thing, and I lived in a shoebox thing of a studio apartment on the first floor of a row home. And he had darted over there because of the ruckus. I could barely call it. I tried to call my sister. I called her. She actually answered, but she's more of a night owl anyway, so it wasn't that out of the ordinary that she might answer. This was in the witching hour of the morning, when even people who work at bars or something would be, probably home and trying to get to sleep. And then people who don't quite wake up yet to get the day started for the early birds, they would have been sort of not quite awake. So it was in that dead zone hour, the witching hour, whatever you want to call it, when you can get away with stuff. You see what I mean? So called her. I could barely hold the phone. I was trembling, convulsing, shaking all over the place. And some people say that when I describe the first 7 days of everything going on, it's kind of like a movie, as if someone were creating their own horror movie or a snuff film, which I don't want to think about, because there's the idea that people could see remotely, as if they were psychic, some sort of psychic medium-ish type person. Say people could actually view this from afar without cameras involved, without a movie set involved. That has been speculated, because some people might, say you had supersonic yogic gurus who actually do have what most people would say would be superpower-ish. Like, how can you see into another room through walls? Or how can you, and can it be done? I don't know. I've had all kinds of experiences revealed to me, kind of, and I didn't know what to say, because I was heightened in a state of shock for 10 years until I moved to Florida, and things calmed down a little. Then there was a pandemic. Then I came back here, and things are quieter. A lot of people have emptied out of the city. It can get busy on a sunny, beautiful day, but something's missing in the city that caused more of whatever was going on in the past. Although there's still activity here, it just looks a little bit differently than it did in the past. So anyway, my sister, she tried to calm me down. She was like, do you have a stick? Do you have anything to put under your doorknob? I didn't have one of those sticks that they used to advertise all the time. But she's like, maybe do you have a chair that you could kind of jam up under there? And that way no one can come in. It would be 10 times harder. My windows, because I was on a first floor row home, a lot of places around here have bars on their windows, so that no one can break in. But it also means someone can't escape. If they were unable to go out their normal door because they're afraid someone's out there in the hallway, then they would be afraid to go out that door, and they can't escape through the front windows. And there was a little tiny postage stamp of a window in a little tiny postage stamp of a closet that had those blocks that you can barely see through. They're warbly blocks. That would look out, if you could look through it, which you really couldn't, it let light in a little bit, to this little tiny alley of a grassy area in a city like this. The homes are very Tetris-like. So things are built in a certain way. You see all these row homes from the front, but in the back, you don't know what's going on. So there are even many, many homes in the city that are built around courtyards, and people don't even know it. They walk down these streets and they have no idea what's behind the house, depending on how a block is situated. There could be a little courtyard, or little alleyways, or little tiny yards for some people. I didn't have access to that. There was an apartment behind me. They did have access to whatever very tiny strip of grass, if somebody were a smoker and wanted to go out there or what have you. No one was home in the apartment behind me. They were conveniently visiting family in the Middle East. It was a couple. It was a white woman, the daughter of a police officer on South Street, who used to be a police officer next to Whole Foods in that precinct. And she worked, or might still work, at the International House. they've changed the name of the International House. Has a different name. And I actually think that things have changed based on a target's movements. So we have to erase a little bit of what happened so that it's harder to prove. You'd have to really go back into the documents over time to say, oh, it was the International House. All right, now it's something else. But anyway, she went with her husband. Her husband was of Middle Eastern descent, and seemingly a super nice guy, although we won't get into it. A lot of tricks are played, and people played stupid tricks, and I don't know why they did it. So there are even people who are nice and everything, and I don't know why. There's a radio tower. Sorry, there's a radio tower on the building, just almost catty-cornered from where I live. It's a huge, gigantic radio tower. So anyway, so if that were then my sister then convinced me to call the police. I don't know why I didn't call them first. I was too afraid. I actually didn't believe it would go to the police. And in the city of Philadelphia back in the day, people were encouraged not to call police on some level because it's a liberal city. So it's like, is there another way to get to the root of something? Or people would wonder, like, should I call the police if someone's being stabbed in the street? Do you think I should call the police? It is that bad. So anyway, you spend 20 minutes while someone's being murdered in the alleyway. Should I call the police? What do you think? I'm afraid to use my phone because I don't want my phone hooked up with the police system. You see what I mean? So anyway, so then I finally called police. They came out, waltzed around. The van had moved up, and they said it was a UPenn shuttle van for people at night. I don't think it was. I don't recall it being a passenger van. I don't recall it being marked. All I saw was a white van and a guy sitting there with a headset looking. So I don't know if someone usually came around at 3:30 in the morning to pick someone up from the building that I lived in. I have no idea. But when I initially called the police, the person who answered had a very South Philly accent, but sometimes their voices can sound fake to me. It's hard to explain. And it's almost like a Joe Pesci like sitcom or some sadistic but funny-ish. It wasn't funny that night, but you know the voices I'm talking about. I'm sorry. But I actually believed that I was calling a fake, that my call was being routed to a fake location so that the CIA would respond looking like the police. I swear this is how bad it was. So they came out, they didn't do much. I was trembling and shaking on the doorstep. And they didn't offer to come in to look in the basement or say, do you want us to come in? And they are allowed on the property. It's not, I looked into this, they are allowed. There would be many years later, I would call someone because of more activity. And that guy came in to the mailboxes, and he had no question about whether or not you could step inside the home because it was a bunch of apartments in a converted row home. So they could have said, do you want us to check the basement? I didn't know what I felt so much like I was imposing on people whose job it is to actually respond to people who are in crisis or have an issue that could be fatal. And I was, later I was like, I should have offered tea and cookies. That's how much they were just standing there like, well, whatever. So I can't say that I was impressed with the police that night. Sorry, whatever. So anyway, but if that weren't enough, then the games commenced. And every time I reached out to someone to try to explain what happened, which is really hard to do when someone's in trauma, it's incredibly hard to be clear. It's hard to be clear as a normal person. It actually takes a lot of skills to be very clear. It takes, for me personally, I became a writer, and that gave me a voice and taught me how to be more clear so that readers know what people are talking, what the author is talking about. And then to put that in verbal form, even harder, because most people have conversations with people they know, and you get the gist, you kind of know what they mean, but not all the time. So to be clear is an actual skill that has to be developed for most people. So anyway, I would reach out to people who were new and recent-ish friends over the past like 2.5 years leading up to 2011. And they behaved in ways that were opposite of what you would expect, unsupportive or accusatory or minimizing. And, oh, is it your perception or reality that something bad happened last night? It's a reality. If someone is freaked out, the reality is something happened that caused someone to freak out. They're trying to minimize the fact that a series of orchestrated events actually was unfolded. There were people who actually premeditated that night. Did they create their own little show or movie? And what does it do to a person to traumatize him or her so much? Does it mean you can put someone in a very vulnerable position in order to try to, in a way, soul snatch or body snatch or gain a lot of energy or prove something? And, I have no idea what's going on. And this is much like a story that I would hear about later where a girl had some friends and they all decided, well, she wasn't in on it, but she took her case to the court, but she was being buried by, it was a woman and like 4 guys. And they wanted to do their own special video or whatever. And they kept shoveling dirt over her, but she started to get really scared. In the courtroom, I believe she claims that she didn't know exactly what they were doing. She worried for her life because they kept shoveling dirt on her. I kind of forget the whole story, but it's like that. Like, I have no idea what's going on. And it's as if there are people who might have thought I did and all that kind of stuff. So I have no clue what this was. I was genuinely scared, SHITLESS. I actually dragged my sister up here the next day, which never happens in my family. First of all, I barely had any money to spend on anything else. I had to get a zip car, go down there. She has her own life and wasn't really expecting to be walking around with me or spending the night with me. So I sort of forced her into that position. It's in my book, Duplicity and Duress. I wound up writing about it 6 years later. I also, things kept happening and happening and happening, and it was like a surreal movie in the city while the blizzard was going on, and people were acting like, it's weird, like it seems crazy, like how people were behaving. And I actually wound up calling my mom and begging her to come up. Again, not a lot of money. She was in Florida living with my aunt. So I wound up charging it on my credit card. And she would later say, we decided to go have hers. But I actually dragged her up here, and she was already, kind of elderly. She was, retired. And I would have never done that. I would visit her. I wouldn't force her to come up here. So for me to go that far, this city was on a special lockdown of, we're going to make a crazy ass movie in this whole city invisibly and totally scare the SHIT out of someone they chose for some reason. It does feel like that. Activity went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. People coming up to me with their dogs going, good girl, no barking, no barking, good girl, no barking. And the message was for me, not for the dog. That's one of the tactics used I actually had to untangle the dog references mentally because it bore so much into my brain that I'm a dog. And in a way, a dog would be like a puppet. Or in the military, I know people have dog tags. Why do they have dog tags? Because they go through so much training, they're basically puppeted, right? So I don't know what to say. I do feel like I'm stronger than most military people, and withstood something that most military people don't have to withstand. I have experienced things that are prisoner of war level, but you can never tell, and I seem really cute and happy or whatever, and that's the name of the game. It is to create so much terror while someone is trained to keep smiling. And it's easier to do it to women for some reason. Male tend to be more dominant, and they would be the ones who know how to do something like this. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much. Again, Philadelphia Walks PTSD, seeking donors, big and tall, short and small, because of how bad this was. And there are people who understand what it is on a very high and deep level, because they can see from greater heights, per se. They have that privilege, and they would know how bad it was. So thank you so much, and have a great day.